in your corner and ready to fight for what's right.
I lead by what I think is right.
He's got your back.
Just give me the facts.
Taking no smack and give him the facts.
Can people expect me to criticize Democrats and Republicans and independents equally? You bet.
Introducing Fighting Joe Morrissey. It's the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. And here's your host, Joe Morrissey.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Joe Morrissey, and welcome to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. If you're listening to us right now, you're listening to us in a myriad of sources. We've got 3 radio stations, 100.5 FM, 92.7 FM, 820 AM, 20,000 folks listening on app and on their computer. And it is a great Thursday, Mr. DC. Great flicks. Yeah. We have a great show today. Our guest coming up in a few moments is going to be somebody I have immense respect for. He is the sitting Lieutenant Governor for the Commonwealth of Virginia, Justin Fairfax. I think, and it's not just me, but Democrats, Republicans alike will say he has done a remarkable job as the titular head of the Virginia State Senate. Breaks ties and organizes and directs the flow of legislation. We're going to hear from Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, who's currently running for governor, along with four other individuals. We'll ask him about the campaign. So I'll specifically ask him, what is your pathway to victory? What do you have to do to win? All right, with that, let's go to my guest. I want to welcome to a large Central Virginia listening audience, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Senator. Thanks so much for having me on. Always great to be with you and your great listening audience.
Well, thanks so much, Governor. Listen, let's get right to it. I have said many times, and I'm going to say it again on the air, what a privilege and honor it is to serve myself in the Virginia State Senate, a body that you over which you preside. You have done a magnificent job. You've had some obstacles. You've had some hurdles that you've had to overcome. But just marshaling the 1,000 pieces of legislation each session through the state Senate, masterful job. And that comes, those kudos come from both sides, D's and R's. So I just wanted to say that publicly.
Well, thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate that. It really has been an honor and a privilege to serve in the Senate as the president of the Senate and serve with, really extraordinary public servants who care deeply about Virginia. And I know that you do, just like everyone else, and you fight for what you believe in. And so it's really been exceptional, and we've gotten a lot of incredible things done. You mentioned I get to break ties as Lieutenant Governor, and as is said, it's one of my favorite parts of the job because every time I vote, I win. And we've been able to win in terms of Medicaid expansion. I'm proud to stay in the Senate. Now 550,000 more Virginians have health insurance as a result of those tie-breaking votes and of the work that so many people have done over years. And also, legalizing marijuana here in Virginia, something I know that you've worked on. I was able to break the ties there. And so we've made progress on criminal justice reform, education, raising wages, really giving folks a shot to rise and to achieve the American dream. And coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic, it really has meant a lot to give people additional security. So
you have, Justin, and you should take a victory lap for several of those victories where, in fact, you were the tie-breaking vote. Justin, tell us about your campaign. You're in your last months as the lieutenant governor, which is often a stepping stone to governor. There was a point a year and a half ago where it was possible that you might have been elevated to governor during the blackface scandal with Governor Northam. Before you tell us about the campaign and how things are going, I want folks to get a flavor of Justin Fairfax, the guy that I know. Tell us about your family. I know your wife is a doctor, your children, where you live, and a little bit about the pleasures and also the maybe the heartache of being a statewide public official.
Definitely, and I appreciate it. We live in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax, and of course, though I travel all around the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we've been proud to serve the Commonwealth, all 8.5 million Virginians, fighting for their families, to again have what we all want, is a better life for our kids and our grandkids, and so that really has been such a privilege. And coming from a place where I had a very difficult set of circumstances, started from a young age, youngest of four, single mom and a great dad, but struggles, and but they were able to put all four of us through college, two of us through law school. My oldest brother's the other lawyer, and so we've gotten to really achieve such great success in life, and that's because people really believed in us and invested in us and fought for us when times were difficult. And that's the attitude that I brought to public service my entire life.
What does your wife do, Justin?
She's a dentist. So you're right. She's a doctor and is a dentist, has a dental practice up here in Fairfax, serves thousands of patients and loves that work, and is an extraordinary doctor, and so and we have two young kids, as you mentioned, and fourth and fifth graders, and so we get to spend tremendous amounts of time together and focusing on, again, what we all are very passionate about, why we got into this work in the first place. And that really is about fighting for everyone's family here in the Commonwealth. Right. So,
well, let me just say this. You mentioned your wife. My wife does not like politics or politicians. She is hugely critical of them. She does not hesitate to voice her opinion. And I'll say this: she dislikes most politicians. I'm not sure where I fall on that scale, but I'll tell you this, Justin: she likes you. She likes the way you have stood up and you have fought for yourself and for your principles. She has empathy for your family, some of the things that they've gone through with your own trials and tribulations, and she has watched you conduct the state senate, and she is a fan of yours.
I appreciate that very much, and please give her my thanks, and I know she such an important part of your great family, and you all have beautiful children. I had the privilege of getting to see them grow up and to know them and appreciate all that you all have done and sacrificed. It is a sacrifice, but you do it because you believe in it, and I think that's what really fuels our public service. So yeah, it's been just really an incredible journey, and one that, as you mentioned, you encounter hurdles and obstacles that are put in your way, but then you have to continue to move forward and know exactly why it is you're doing this work. And I think that's what the people have been so supportive of and responsive to, is that we've stayed focused on them and on fighting for them and showing up every day.
Well, Justin, let's talk about moving forward. If you had run, and I think I might have even said to you, because during over the last couple of years, had you run for re-election as lieutenant governor, you were a virtual shoo-in. But you threw your hat into the race for governor. You're one of 5 candidates for governor. Tell us candidly where you are in the race. I've watched all of the debates. No question you've acquitted yourself in an exemplary fashion. But you're up against 2 other African Americans. They will be necessarily splitting part of that African American vote. You're up against a formidable opponent in the sense that McAuliffe has raised a ton of money. Okay?
Right.
More than all the other candidates combined. Tell us first, do you have a pathway to victory on Tuesday, and what is it?
Definitely. It really comes down to the people coming out to vote. And, Joe, as you know, I've been in now several statewide elections, including ones where I've been outspent, and yet we've been able to performed very, very well. And in 2017, of course, won the general election, being outspent by an incumbent state senator with a lot of name ID and a lot of resources, but we took our message directly to the voters, and they responded because we again had an authentic message focused on them and their families, giving them economic opportunity, fighting for criminal justice reform and education, investment, and that's really what we've done here as well. And so, as you know, Joe, every election comes down to the voters coming out and voting, and you have won some incredible races against tremendous odds because people heard you and know that they have a fighter in you. And
but
so,
let me say this, Justin.
What we've done.
Let me say this. In a state Senate race or a race for citywide office for Commonwealth's attorney, I can do what I do best. I can knock on the door. I can look. Our producer, DC, can answer it, and he can look at me with these huge guns of arms on him. He's formidable. He's about 6'10", kind of scary. He's got a chest as big as the studio, and he can say, "I'm a Republican. Why would I vote for you?" And I'm telling you, by the time I finish my conversation with DC, you may not vote for me, but you're going to like me, and you're going to like that I at least stick to my.
That's right.
Stand up for myself.
Well, I was actually going to ask Mr. Fairfax that. So I am conservative. I usually vote R. Mr. Fairfax, why should conservatives and Republicans consider voting for you?
They should, because I'm focused on lifting them and their families up too. When I've fought for Medicaid expansion and cast those tie-breaking votes, I didn't think this will be great for Democratic families. I thought this would be great for all of Virginia's families to have health insurance for them and for their kids. When I fought for criminal justice reform, also something that really impacts communities all throughout the Commonwealth. And, we put forward the most transformational education investment plan in the history of Virginia, our 40-30-10 plan, which would rebuild and reimagine every public school that's at least 40 years old with a $30 billion investment, and do so within 10 years. And raising teacher pay above the national average for the first time ever, and guaranteeing every young person summer job or enrichment opportunity. So these apply across the board. And I've traveled all around Virginia, probably over 100,000 miles since, my time in public life. And, I understand that every single community needs to have folks fighting for them. They need investment. They need people who understand, what that community is facing. And I think the time that we've spent with people in the community on the ground has been invaluable. And Joe, you mentioned going door to door and getting to know folks. I've done tons of that, and also have been there. When people have needed us, whether it was last year during the unrest, whether it was through the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges that we all face, including our small business owners.
Yeah, that's my question. If I could win those races, because I can knock on the EC or DC's door, and DC can, I can talk to him. Are you able to do that, Justin, in a statewide race where there are I'm predicting somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000 people will come out, Democrats? Can you reach out and touch them in a statewide race?
Absolutely. And we've been doing that throughout the course of this race, but we also, have the benefit of having done that over a number of years. We didn't just show up when the name was on the ballot. And I think the people remember that. They remember that you've come to their churches, their communities, their schools, and fought for them, even when you weren't asking for their vote, but instead asking them to, put you in a position to fight for them. And so that's something that, we have benefited from, these great networks all throughout Virginia. And we have people, volunteers on the ground who have just been incredibly active.
Okay. All right. Fair. So you're touching people that you think will come out on June 8th. Good. Justin, you got to stay with us. I want to talk to you more. And folks, when we come back, I'm going to tell you what I think was one of the most unfair treatments of a public official, an elected official, that I've witnessed in 30 years of public service. I know I look like I'm in my early 40s, but I didn't get elected when I was 10. All right? But what folk did to Justin Fairfax, our lieutenant governor, was disgraceful, deplorable, and pure mean-spirited. We'll get into that, and I'm going to ask Justin how it affected his campaign for governor. Stick with us, folks. You're listening to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show.
You're listening to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show on WJFN.
Just give me the facts.
Let's get back to the action. Here's Joe.
Welcome back, folks. This is Joe Morrissey, and you're listening to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. We have as our guest today one of the gubernatorial candidates, the head of the Virginia State Senate, the current Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Justin Fairfax. And we're talking about the campaign. And right before the break, I said to you that I wanted to share with you one of the most, what I thought was disgraceful and deplorable behavior or incidents that occurred in Virginia politics in 2019. And I've seen a lot. And I understand that politics is a contact sport. But what happened to Justin Fairfax in 2019 when he was accused by two women of sexual misconduct and never getting able to defend himself in a court of law was simply shameful. And what was particularly egregious, folks, is the following. And I said this publicly on the Senate floor. By all means, if you think you're an aggrieved party, give that person, man, woman, child, a voice. But you cannot lodge or lob a hand grenade and then walk away from it and not defend it. And here was Justin Fairfax begging the prosecutors to open an investigation because the facts simply did not support the story. And what later developed was that it was an organized hit job on the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor remained stoic, although it had to be painful for his family, continued to guide the Senate in a stellar fashion. One Republican senator, Tommy Norman, praised the lieutenant governor at the end of the session in 2019 for doing a superb job under what were obviously difficult conditions. But Justin, I'm telling you, to this day, the denial of due process to you was simply unconscionable. And you gotta admit it has affected the gubernatorial race. What's your thoughts, Governor?
Yeah, Joe. Well, again, thank you for sharing your thoughts and also for, standing up in those moments for, the truth, for due process. And you were one of the earliest and loudest voices, fighting for justice and also calling these allegations what they were, which is false. And I think if anyone, is accused and certainly falsely accused, they should have the opportunity to show that these are false. And we've done everything that we can. I've never, seen a situation where, as you mentioned, we've, looked for opportunities to have an investigation to prove they're false, to, pass 2 lie detector tests and have filed legal suits. So, and put forward plenty of information showing they're simply not true. And I think that,
even the major media have came around, and here's what happened. DC, you remember this? Mm-hmm. The first claim, the first allegation within, I'm not kidding, folks, within 30 seconds to 1 minute, I am not exaggerating this, people from other Democrats that perhaps had another agenda, can you say a design on the office of governor, started calling for his resignation even before the allegation had finished coming out of the alleged victim's mouth. It was organized, and then, not a lot of people know this, I've seen the evidence, then it was discovered on one person's computer on the Sunday night before it came out, Monday morning plan to get Justin Fairfax. It was shameful.
The timing was very suspect. And it seemed like the top tiers of the Virginia government allegations for all three, from Northam all the way down, it just came out. It was like 1, 2, 3. So,
well, here's the thing, though, DC. The Northam allegations came down when that photo first arose, and then if he were to resign, and many Ds were calling for him to resign, who would become the governor? Who would be elevated? Justin Fairfax.
Justin Fairfax. That's what I was. Yeah, exactly.
But there was one person, okay, who had designs on the governor's mansion in 2021 or 2025 and didn't want to see that happen. I won't say his name, but his initials are LeVar Stoney. Okay?
Our lovely
and
mayor.
One of his key aides' wife was the one that orchestrated the Monday morning plan. Okay? Justin, I got to tell you, I've got thick skin. I've been through my own trials and tribulations, but man, I felt for that. I felt horrible for you. I felt horrible for your family, what they had to go through. It was a shameful episode in Virginia politics.
And I got to tell you, Joe, and the voters are incredibly smart. They, were able to see through this, right away, and certainly over the last 2 years, they totally understood, what this was, and also that it wasn't true, that it was simply false. And so, you hear from people all across the spectrum, even across party lines, who say that this is not the kind of politics that they want to see, that they want people to engage in, and that they want people who are going to stand up to this sort of thing, and fight, and also stay focused again on their families and on what we came to do in Richmond to ensure that all Virginians are the subject of our efforts to improve their lives. And so, it really was incredibly, shameful and difficult, and and still. And you mentioned, the impact on the race and on so many other things. But again, I think that when you really talk to voters and you talk to folks, everyday Virginians, they have a different view on this than what you often hear in the media.
I know. We're insulated in our cubbyhole of legislative bodies. Listen, we've got lots of callers calling in. Let's go to Adrian. Adrian's on hold from Richmond. Good afternoon, Adrian, and welcome to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. You've got a question.
Senator Morrissey, I have a question. I want to say something real quick, but two things real quick. Senator Joe Morrissey, I'm glad to hear your voice back on the radio, man. You bring truth, and I love it, and it's good to hear the other side as well as the perspective from a different, from the Democrats and such. And second, and I'll get to my question, but second, I want to say you are awesome for sticking up for Lieutenant Governor, because you are right. I remember when your show was on in the mornings at 10 o'clock, I'd listen, and you were the only person that I heard sticking up for him, and he should be grateful that he had a voice like you sticking up for him, because a lot of men don't have that, and I give you both a lot of credit for fighting through it and sticking with it. So,
well, Adrian, I appreciate you saying that, and I'll say this, and I said it at the time. I don't care if Justin Fairfax was a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a libertarian, a vegetarian. I would have stuck up for the person that did not get due process. You cannot lob a grenade and then simply walk out of the room. Okay?
Correct.
But you got to realize this happens to conservatives
of
all the time.
Agree. So Lieutenant and Senator Morrissey, Lieutenant Governor, sorry. I got a big question for you, and I'm going to punch hard. So, my question to you folks, and I know I'm asking you, Lieutenant Governor, because you might be our governor one day, is why is it that I researched and seen, and I'll go toe-to-toe with you folks on this, because I've done it really gets under my skin. This is why it's hard for me to support Democrats, is because I don't hear Democrats ever talking about God anymore. And I don't want to hear your personal opinion. I'm talking in broad, because I believe you guys, from what I see, you guys seem to be good men and honest, and I think that comes from God. I personally think that. Now, I could be wrong, but from the top down, from President Biden down, I feel like the Democratic Party, which is why I am not in line with you guys anymore, is a big reason, because you guys don't talk about God. You guys, some of your own fellow, Democrats want to take God out of the Pledge of Allegiance and such. Just for a quick example, and it's very disturbing that like folks like you don't stick up for God or stick up for just having God in our life. No matter how you feel about it, I'm not saying that we need to force that on us and continue to be like that, but it really is disappointing to never hear Democrats talk about God anymore. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to hang up and listen, Senator Jock. I got to keep working, but I'd love to hear what you guys had to say, and I'll listen. Thank you,
All
sir,
right,
both of
Adrian.
you.
Justin, why don't you take it first? Keep it to about a minute and a half, and then I'm going to weigh in.
Sure. Here's the thing, and Adrian, thanks for calling in. I think that people, of faith should be able to freely practice their faith, and that's something that we stick up for. It's something that in Virginia we're champions for, the Declaration of Rights and religious freedom. What a lot of people also don't know, and Joe, you of course can attest to this, is that we open each session of the Senate with the Pledge of Allegiance and also with prayer. Typically of people from different faiths, and so I think that there is a strong and robust support for those in the faith community in Virginia. Certainly, I support it. I know Joe does as well. And I don't want people to believe that there's one party or another that has monopoly on faith or on God, and so it's really something that if you talk to people and understand their where they come from and what their focus is in life, you really understand that faith runs across the spectrum and across the board, and I'll always support people's opportunities and their rights to practice their faith freely and openly, and also to live out the faith in terms of what we do to support each other, getting folks more health care, advantages in society to help, the least and the lost is something that I think is an act of practicing your faith.
Right. Well, first of all, I too want to thank Adrian for the call, and that was a good point, Governor, to emphasize that we begin every session with a prayer. Now, that prayer can be from a rabbi, a priest, a minister, an imam, a pastor, Jew, Gentile, it doesn't make any difference. The prayer begins the session. And of course, I support and endorse anybody's own religiosity and the furtherance of their own faith.
But when they say at the end of the prayer, I gotta interject here. When they say at the end of the prayer, amen, a woman, that's where I gotta draw the line. That's what Nancy Pelosi, that's what happened about a month ago.
Oh, I don't remember that.
You don't remember that. Maybe Mr. Fairfax can tell you about that.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that either.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
But again, if you watch us in the Senate of Virginia, you'll see that is a part of allowing people to express their religious views and have religious freedom, and I think that's something, a bedrock principle of our Constitution.
And I'll say this, but Adrian's point was, well, God isn't mentioned by D's. Well, not so. Adrian's got to listen. My legislative aide just walked into the room, and we've got to make sure that folk can hear my point of personal privilege. It's what comes at the end of a Senate session when the lieutenant governor will call on a senator to say whatever he wants about whatever subject. And I, as you know, Governor, frequently reference my own God, and I don't hesitate to talk about religion because, let's be clear, I grew up in a Catholic family. I went to Catholic middle school and Catholic high school. I even went to, I guess, a Jesuit law school, the Georgetown University. I got my my master's in law at the in Dublin, Ireland, at Trinity College. So faith and religion affects my very being, and there are so many times when I've had my own trials and tribulations, and I just think back about what my mom said about God doesn't give you any heavier cross than you can bear, okay? And also, when you do have crosses, your point you should be is, why not give it to me versus somebody else? And Justin, I firmly believe, and you and I have had personal conversations, the crosses that you've had to build shoulder with false allegations, I am convinced that someday, I hope it's sooner rather than later, you will say, thank you, God, for giving me those crosses. It made me a better person, a better man today. But Adrian, I'll end up by saying this. We had a vote on the floor of the Senate on the abortion rights, and I was the only Democrat that did not vote in furtherance of abortion rights. And I think I referenced, correct me if I'm wrong, in my speech, that life begins at the very beginning and continues until God calls you home, and that includes the death penalty.
That was the death penalty speech.
Pardon me?
That was the death penalty speech.
My LA is saying my death penalty speech.
Yeah.
Make sure that Adrian we need Adrian to call us and give us his email. We're going to get that to him. Because I'm just going to digress for a second, then Justin, it's back to you. Here's what's interesting, DC. The Democrats are all in favor of, all of them except for me, abortion rights, and they're against the death penalty. D's are against the death penalty because it's the unnatural taking of the human life. The Republicans, okay,
but yet they're
are
all
pro-life, but they're in favor of the death penalty.
Right. So
the only person that's consistent both ways is my friend Bill Stanley, okay, and me.
Well, now see, as a conservative, I am pro-life. I'm pro-life to the core. I was so
you're
happy.
Against the death penalty?
I am so happy that we abolished the death penalty in Virginia.
Yeah. So the bottom line, Adrian, is that, no, I do reference God in speeches, in legislation, certainly in points of personal privilege, and I'm constantly, making references to things that my mother used to say. How many times have you heard me say, referencing my mother's comment that God works in mysterious ways? God, she said it 1,000 times to me, Anyway, Justin, your quick take, because you finish with your thoughts, Justin.
Yeah, just on the subject matter, I too, by the way, am very proud that we've abolished the death penalty here in Virginia, becoming the first southern state to have done that. It's the right thing to do for many, many reasons, including issues of racial injustice. And when it comes to women's reproductive rights, and I understand and I've heard the views that have been shared here, I've been, firmly in support of a woman's ability to control her own healthcare decisions in her own body, and I've stood up for that. And but understanding that again, people have different views on these very serious issues that implicate so much of their own background and philosophy in life. And I think that's also, again, why it's so important to have religious freedom, to have the ability to protect people's rights, and they can observe in the ways that they choose. Okay. And so, that's really what freedom here in Virginia and across our country is all about.
Well, Justin, I was going to say before you jump in, Joe, I'm coming from the everyday American here in Virginia. So if you were governor right now, would you do away, or how would you handle the mask mandates, especially in our schools?
Yeah, well, also, it's a great question, and you likely saw what Governor Northam recently announced on May 28th, which was the lifting of the various restrictions about social distancing and various mask mandates. And so, we here in Virginia are, in many ways, getting ahead of this curve because of the work that we've done to keep people safe, to get folks vaccinated, to, throughout the course of this pandemic, to observe those science-based precautions to try to stop the spread of this virus. So I very hopeful that where we are is that, first of all, schools be opened here in the fall, and many of them are already open, that we will, continue to see a decrease in the infection rates and the hospitalization rates. And so in Virginia, we are really, in many ways, going in the right direction. And I understand it's been a very difficult year, but again, Virginians have come through it, I think, in a way that we should be proud of, despite the many difficulties that we've faced, and the nearly 11,000 Virginians whose lives were lost and so many others impacted. But because of the work that we did together, we are definitely going in a very good direction.
DC, you've never asked me, and thank you for that, Justin, but listen, I have no problem with the mask. Come on, let's be clear. many conservative folks say, oh, you can't tell me what to do and wear my mask and this and that. Let's be clear. All right, I'm a huge proponent of preparing for victory, whether it's on the sports field or whatnot. You do things that put you in, as Jimmy Valvano used to say, coach of the NC State Wolfpack, be in a position so you're prepared to win, okay? Let's be clear. The influenza rate in this country has dropped to a 100-year low because people aren't being disseminating those germs. They're wearing their masks, are involved in social distancing. Do I think it? How does it work? I don't know, but it's good. There's, I think, empirical evidence that mask and social distancing work. So keep at it. And if you don't like it, guys, don't wear your mask, but just go somewhere else.
Well, here's the thing, though. You say the flu rate has dropped, and I believe that, but the suicide rate has skyrocketed due to the social distancing. That is absolutely true. And I'm not saying, no. I'm not saying if you want to wear a mask, wear it. I tell people that all the time. But at a certain point, I think we need to drop the mask in certain places. And I know Virginia recently has done a great job with that.
All right. Hey, listen, guys, the listening audience out there, that's a topic we could go on for a while. I want to talk, in 30 seconds, and Justin, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I know that the huge amount of money that has already been spent on this race. I just read an article today that Glenn Youngkin has put another $5.5 million of his own money in the campaign. Totaling, he's got $12 million of his own dinero that he spent on his race so far. Quickly, you got 1 minute, and you're going to have the final minute, Justin. How much is money going to affect this Democratic primary on June 8th, and do you have the funds to get through to the end?
What's really going to determine this race, Joe, as in every race that I've been in and every race I think that's ever been run, is the voters coming out to vote. And we've already started early voting and would encourage everyone to continue to come out and vote safely. But, June 8th will be determined by the voters, and that's our key. Voters, particularly given the difficulties of the last year, are really focused on who has a message that is about me and my family, is about getting us safely through this pandemic, investing in education, who has fought for us, who's had our back, and who stands up. And so that's really what is determining these elections.
Justin,
and so
thank you for that.
Traveled around, that's what it's all about.
And thank you for being a guest on our show. It's been an honor to serve with you in the Virginia State Senate. Folks, that was Justin Fairfax, our Lieutenant Governor, and you've been listening to the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show.
On 92.7 FM, Chester, Richmond.